This is not breaking news. This is not a scandal. This is not about one person. This is about something quieter and far more dangerous. For years, you were told power collapses when people rise up, that revolutions come from the streets. That pressure comes from the outside. That story is comforting. It is also wrong. What you are watching now is a system beginning to attack itself. Not loudly, not all at once, but from the inside out. An authority structure that still looks solid on television, but no longer works in real life, where legitimacy erodes faster than fear, where obedience costs more than defiance, where even success no longer buys survival. If you think this is about anger or ideology or protest, stay with me. Because the most destabilizing force in any system is not opposition, it's realization. And once that begins, it doesn't stop. Stay here. You'll want to see where this actually starts. What actually controls a system like this is not force. Force is expensive. Force breaks things. What controls it is expectation. The expectation that tomorrow will look roughly like today. That effort will be rewarded. That loyalty will be remembered. That suffering has a purpose. That expectation is the real currency, and it is fragile. When it holds, a system can survive shortages, sanctions, even fear. When it breaks, uniforms become costumes, orders become suggestions, silence becomes calculation. You can see it when officials speak and no one listens. When numbers stop persuading, when threats need to be repeated, power begins to drain not upward, but inward. Every decision costs more than the last. Every display of strength reveals weakness. This is the moment most people miss, because nothing dramatic has happened yet. But the system is already compensating, already tightening, already afraid, and fear inside a rigid structure doesn't stabilize. It accelerates, and that's where this moves next. The most dangerous changes never announce themselves. They arrive quietly. They normalize before the system promised progress, not wealth, just movement. Forward motion you could feel year to year. Now, that promise has been replaced with endurance, survival as a virtue, stagnation reframed as stability. This didn't happen overnight. That's the point. Salaries stopped meaning what they used to. Credentials stopped protecting people. Effort stopped converting into security. And still, the structure remained standing, which made the damage easy to ignore. Because when decline is slow, it feels personal, like individual failure, like bad luck, until it doesn't. Until enough people in enough places realize the math no longer works. Not for them, not for anyone. That's when private frustration becomes public recognition. And recognition is contagious. Nothing has exploded yet. No line has been crossed. But the shift has already happened. And once a system trains its people to expect less every year, it eventually teaches them something else entirely. It teaches them there is nothing left to lose. And that changes what comes next. Then something small happened. On paper, insignificant. A comparison, two prices separated by time. Once a uniform paid enough to buy movement, a machine. Freedom measured in kilometers. Now, expertise can't buy the same thing. Not with weeks of work. Not with months. This wasn't a statistic. It wasn't a report. It was a calibration error the system could not hide. Because when someone who followed every rule says the numbers don't add up, the illusion cracks. Not in the streets. In the mind. You don't need ideology to understand subtraction. You don't need politics to feel shrinkage. That's why this moment spread so fast. Because it didn't accuse, it calculated. And calculation is dangerous. It invites verification. It invites comparison. Stay with this detail. Because while attention was fixed on noise and slogans, This single imbalance exposed something larger, a system that can no longer explain itself. And once that happens, everything that follows starts to look less like protest and more like diagnosis. Here is how the system actually works. Loss does not appear all at once. It is distributed carefully downward. At the top, stability is preserved through insulation, fixed access, guaranteed supply, protected margins. Below that, strain is absorbed by professionals, people with credentials, people trained to endure, people expected to be patient. Below them, everyone else. The system survives by converting economic failure into individual responsibility. If you can't keep up, it's because you didn't adapt fast enough, didn't work hard enough, didn't sacrifice enough. But that story only functions while effort still correlates with outcome. When it doesn't, damage stops being invisible. It pools, and when it pools, it moves upward, not as rage. As pressure, that pressure forces insiders to choose, defend a structure that no longer works, or acknowledge what everyone else already feels. This is where loyalty becomes expensive, where silence carries risk, and the system, designed to suppress dissent from below, has no tools for doubt at the center. That's the flaw, and it's already exposed. What comes next is not ideological, it's mechanical. Once pressure reaches the core, time compresses. Messages change tone, orders multiply, contradictions appear, crowds form faster than plans. Response lags behind movement. Security units wait, then move, then stop. Signals cross, authority fragments. You see barricades where commands used to be, vehicles turn sideways, silence where coordination should be. This isn't strategy. It's hesitation. Force is still available, but trust is not. And without trust, every action risks acceleration. Every shot risks multiplication. So the system hesitates. And hesitation spreads. What looks like control on screen feels like absence on the ground. And absence is dangerous because it invites substitution. Something else starts filling the space. Not leadership, not yet. Momentum. And momentum doesn't ask permission. It moves. This is where you enter the story. Not as a protester, not as a spectator, but as a variable. Because systems like this don't collapse abstractly. They collapse across ordinary lives. When movement costs more than time, when work stops producing safety, when planning becomes guesswork, you feel it first as caution. You delay purchases, you recalculate futures, you lower expectations quietly. Then it reaches something closer, a job that no longer protects you, a credential that no longer translates, a rule that no longer guarantees anything. That's when fear changes shape. It stops being personal. It becomes shared. You don't need coordination for that. You need recognition. And once recognition spreads, participation becomes passive. You don't have to join anything. You just stop complying. That's the moment power starts leaking everywhere at once. Not dramatically, irreversibly. If this feels familiar, stay with me. Because what you're watching isn't confined to one place, and it doesn't end where it started. Systems like this don't fail in isolation. They resonate because structures built on insulation share the same weakness. They depend on the belief that collapse is contagious only from the outside. It isn't. When internal fracture becomes visible, it travels faster than force. Across borders, across alliances, across assumptions, markets hesitate. Partners recalibrate. Observers stop treating stability as permanent. Not because they expect imitation, but because they recognize the pattern. A system that cannot correct internally eventually forces correction externally, and that realization triggers preemptive fear. Not of invasion, of precedent. Because once elite defection proves possible, Every closed structure starts scanning itself for fault lines. Trust tightens. Loyalty is tested. Silence becomes suspicious. What looked like a local imbalance now reads like a structural warning. And warnings don't stay contained. They propagate quietly, unevenly, uncontrollably, which means what comes next won't be decided only where this began. It will be shaped by how many others see themselves in it. And what they do with that recognition, from here, the system has only a few directions it can move. None of them are stable. The first is adjustment, surface concessions, economic recalibration, selective reform meant to restore expectation without surrendering control. This path buys time. It does not restore trust. It requires discipline the system may no longer possess. The second is erosion, slow fragmentation, authority held in some places, absent in others. Rules applied unevenly, power maintained through inertia rather than belief. This looks like survival. It is decay in motion. The third is rupture, a sudden loss of coherence. Elite defection becomes visible. Security alignment breaks. The system does not fall, it disconnects. Center and periphery stop recognizing each other. None of these paths announce themselves clearly. They overlap. They masquerade as one another. What matters is speed. Because the faster pressure accumulates, the less control remains over which path dominates. And that's the risk now. Not collapse, acceleration. When a system can no longer slow events enough to choose its outcome, the future stops being managed. It starts arriving. And the final shape of that arrival has not been decided yet. Here is the part that should make you uneasy. Systems like this don't collapse when everyone agrees they should. They collapse when no one knows who is still in charge. When authority speaks and the room calculates instead of obeys. When survival decisions are made horizontally, not vertically. When waiting becomes more dangerous than acting. That is where this now sits. Unresolved, unstable, not finished. Because the most dangerous phase is not the moment of impact. It's the moment just before, when outcomes multiply faster than control. When every actor believes someone else will move first. If you are looking for certainty, you won't find it here. What you will find is a warning signal, one that doesn't belong to a single country or a single system. Watch what happens when legitimacy breaks before force does. Watch who hesitates, watch who recalculates. And most importantly, watch what happens next. If you want to understand where this leads, if you want to see which systems can absorb this pressure and which ones can't, stay with this. Because the next phase doesn't announce itself. And missing it means missing the moment that matters most.